Okay, so picture this. A major regional war has just exploded. We're talking sanctions, economic chaos, a world teetering on the brink. And smack dab in the middle of all this is Pakistan, facing some pretty serious threats to its economy, its energy, its security, everything. It's the kind of pressure cooker moment that can make or break a country. But what's actually happening on the ground? Let's dig in.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. On the one hand, you have these massive, scary threats. War, economic shocks, supply chains getting totally wrecked. But on the other hand, the reality inside Pakistan is, well, it's surprisingly calm. Fuel supplies are flowing just fine. You don't see any panic buying in the stores. And the government's actually getting nods of approval for its diplomacy. So what is going on? How is the state managing to keep things so stable when the world outside is in chaos?
The answer, at least in theory, should be pretty straightforward. You see, modern states have what you could call an emergency toolkit. They don't just wing it when a crisis hits. They have a whole system of special committees and authorities designed for these exact high-stakes situations. And if you look at Pakistan's toolkit, it's actually pretty impressive, at least on paper. You've got the National Security Committee, the NSC, sitting right at the top. You've got apex committees for the federal government and the provinces, a whole authority for counterterrorism, and of course oversight committees in parliament. It's a really solid framework built for clear, structured decision-making.
Now, of all those tools, the National Security Committee, or NSC, is the big one. It's the absolute top of the pyramid. The Prime Minister chairs it, and it brings all the key civilian and military leaders into one room. When a crisis hits, this is supposed to be the room where the biggest, toughest decisions get made. It is the single most powerful tool in that whole kit.
So naturally, you would assume that with a crisis this huge, the NSC would be working around the clock, right? But this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. Because as journalist Ahmed Bilal Mahoub points out in the source material we're looking at, something very strange is going on. Or maybe more accurately, nothing is going on.
So let me just ask you, a massive regional crisis has been raging for more than a month, directly impacting Pakistan's stability. How many times do you think this essential, top-level security committee has officially met to figure out a plan? Once? Twice? A dozen times? The answer is just wild. According to the source, in the entire month since this all started, the National Security Committee has not met. Not even once. Just let that sink in for a moment. Zero. A big, fat zero.
The most important, most powerful institutional tool for managing a national crisis has been left on the shelf, gathering dust, during one of the most serious tests the country has faced. Okay, so if the main decision-making body is out of the picture, then how on earth is the government handling this? Who is steering the ship? Well, to figure that out, we have to look at where things are actually happening. And this table right here tells the whole story. It's not that nothing's happening. The president, for example, held a meeting about energy. And Parliament? They've debated the crisis for over 6 hours. The Foreign Affairs Committee got a briefing. So there's activity. But look at what's missing. The NSC is at zero, and just as importantly, the big political parties aren't formally meeting either. The response seems to be happening in these little pockets, completely bypassing the main official channels. And this gets us to the absolute heart of the matter. You might be sitting there thinking, hey, if it's working and things are calm, who cares how they do it? But the author argues that this success might just be a mirage. Taking this kind of shortcut, bypassing the proper institutions, is actually a huge risk for the future. The main point is this. Good crisis management isn't just about getting through the next 24 hours. By ignoring the very structures that were built for these moments, the government is essentially making a massive gamble with the country's long-term health and stability. The source actually breaks this gamble down into 3 huge risks. First, you undermine public trust. When you use formal institutions, it's transparent, it's legitimate. Without them, decisions feel like they're made behind closed doors. Second, it gets rid of the government's cushion. See, when the NSC makes a call, everyone in that room shares the responsibility. If things go south with this ad hoc approach, there's no institutional cover. And that leads right to the third risk, a future blame game. With no formal minutes, no record of who decided what, it becomes incredibly easy for everyone to point fingers at each other if things take a turn for the worse. So this whole situation leaves us with a really fundamental question. When we talk about successful crisis management, do we only care about the final outcome, keeping the lights on and the country calm? Or does the process, using transparent, accountable institutions, actually matter more for the long-term health of a nation? It's a tough one,
And right now, Pakistan is a fascinating and maybe a little worrying case study of a country that seems to be acing the crisis, but maybe at the expense of the very systems designed to protect it.